Hello, everyone, and welcome to our the last live of this application period. My name is Douglas, and I work at the Study in Sweden team here at the Swedish Institute, and I'm going to be basically your host and passing most of the questions over to Universityadmissions, who have joined us today for this chat. I would love if we can maybe get a brief intro from my wonderful friends over at University Admissions, Marleen and Ida. Do you guys want to just briefly introduce yourselves, say where you work, I guess, and what you do?
Sure. Should I start, Ida? I can start.
Go ahead.
Please.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Hi, my name is Marleen, and I work at the Swedish Council for Higher Education. And part of what we do is work with admission to universities in Sweden. And so we call that University Admissions in Sweden. Not a very strange name. And I work with our communication to international students and mostly with focus on admission to university.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marleen. Ida, please.
Sure. Good to be back. My name is Ida, and I work at University Admissions in Sweden as admissions officer. So I'm probably going to be the boring one during this talk and say all the rules and be like,
there's no boring one.
Lines and stuff. But hopefully I can be a little helpful in answering your questions at least. And I'm sitting at home, as many of us do nowadays. Stockholm is very beautiful today. It's been sunny and snowy. So I'm in a good mood. So let's go.
I agree. It is a beautiful day. Yeah, with the snow.
Beautiful. This is
not always like this in Sweden, but
we may have to turn my camera and show you guys the outside at some stage. But yeah, so for this live stream, it's a last minute Q&A before the application deadline. We are going to be taking questions from the audience. I can see there's already over 100 people that have joined right now. That's super cool. We have a chat in front of us, so whether you're joining us on Facebook or on YouTube, or this is streaming, we can see your questions you send in here. Definitely, thank you. You guys have been great. Before I even asked you to give a shout out where you're from, you guys have been doing that. Swaziland, Zambia, Liberia, all over the place.
So cool.
Super cool. Very cool. So please send in your questions. Though, just a heads up that we won't be able to answer every single question you guys send in. We're going to take the questions we think are the kind of the most relevant and most key for a wider audience. But we also actually have one of your colleagues, Pamela, from University Admissions, who's on the back end, who is going to be trying to answer questions in the chat as well. So even if we don't get around to answering your questions in the chat, Pamela might be able to answer your questions there. So for this live stream, we have application deadline fast approaching, and that's what we want to focus on, your last minute application questions. But maybe, can we, I guess, start off and maybe just tell us, I don't know, Marleen or Ida, I can start off with you Marleen. Tell us about the application, which is fast approaching here.
Yeah, normally the application deadline is the 15th of January. We talked about this at our last live stream that, and you guys have it in your fun video of the most common mistakes, which I love, is that this year the application deadline is on Monday, the 17th of January, because we don't like people to have to do things on the weekend. So we'd like to have the dates on Monday. We've always done that, which I think is actually pretty cool. And then it's the 1st of February, the deadline for submitting your documents. A lot of people ask, well, what's the difference between the two and what should I do? I remember, Ida, you said the last time we were here that send in everything by Monday. That's the best time to do everything that you can do. Send in your application, select your courses, submit it, do all that, and also upload your documents and get that straightened out at the same time. But if you don't have everything ready for that, you can wait until the 1st of February to get your documents in. We have, and actually too, just a little bit of, background information, or kind of maybe a little bit of insider information. One of the reasons why we have the documents due 2 weeks later is from an old process where people used to send in all of their documents by regular mail. And we like to have a little bit of a lag time between the last day to apply and then when your documents need to come in. So it's kind of cool how we're still stuck a little bit in the paper process, isn't it? And you find it all over the place. I think you guys who are watching must know how that is too, that, we have a hard time getting out of, paper and getting to electronics completely, which I think is actually pretty cool.
So the history with the paper documents has saved us, the applicants, a little buffer to get the things in. So what's the important thing to get in on the 17th of January, guys?
Just the application.
Just
For the
application.
17th of January, just the application. Yeah.
And that means that you go.
Yeah, 1st of February is where you have to have all the documents submitted and also your payment of application fee, or if you're supposed to be exempt from the application fee, that documentation also needs to be submitted by 1st of February.
Okay, great. So just the audience knows here, I'm going to be showing your questions on the screen as they come in. I've got a ton of questions already, which is great. I'm just going through them, and I just want to find the question here I got. But what if someone, they send in their application and then they upload a wrong document? How can they do anything about that?
We get that question a lot. One of the things, there's a few things that we can say about uploading documents. One thing that I can suggest a tip is that if you were going to send in your documents via regular mail, you would make sure that you had the correct things before you sent them in. So I think it's pretty good to think about the fact that, let me get things all straightened out. I have things the way that I want them to be before I upload them. Otherwise, we've had people who upload the same document with just a few changes 8 or 9 times, and it just really causes a delay in reviewing your application. There's so many things to look at. But at the same time, if you do make a mistake, like we all do, and you upload a document and you think, okay, that wasn't the right one, or that wasn't complete, or this is another one that I want to upload, you can't delete the old ones. You have to keep them there, but don't worry about it. And Ida can attest to this as an admissions counselor. It's not going to be a penalty to you if you have an old document, then you have an updated document. What I'd suggest is when you name your documents, when you update the first one, call it updated with the same name as the first one. That way, maybe somehow people will have an idea, or you'll have an idea of which document it was that you sent in first and which one it was that you sent in after that. I don't know if you have any more tips, Ida. I'm sure that you guys see documents like this all the time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good recommendation. Also, I'm going to be the boring one already. You won't get any extra time. So if you submit the wrong documents before 1st of February, and then you only realize that after 1st of February, you're not going to be exempt from the deadline. So it's so important with this deadline, 1st of February. If you submit the wrong documents before that, we won't give you any extra time for submitting them later.
And then your application will be considered late.
Yes.
And that's not a good thing.
That is not a good thing. We don't want that to happen, but that makes sense, I suppose. All right, cool. So
I can add something to that,
Marleen,
Doug, as
please,
well, because there's another really interesting question that I think goes along with that. Some universities ask for students to send in a letter of intent or a CV or things like that. But the letter of intent, we often get a lot of questions about, because people say, well, do I need to write the same one for every single program I'm going to apply to? You don't have to, of course not. I think the best thing to do with your letter of intent is make sure that it's about the program that you're actually applying to. But it isn't like the universities are going to go in and read all the other ones just to find out if you cheated or wrote something different on the other ones. They don't have a lot of time to review all the applications. So they're going to look at the letter of intent that you submit for that program. So don't worry about that either. I think some people are concerned that if I say the same things for 2 different things I've applied to, don't worry. That's not going to be a penalty to you at all.
Okay, that's really good to know. Thanks, Marleen. So then a question here. So when these students have applied, I guess, what are the individual universities going to be evaluating when they're looking at applications?
I can start answering to that. So what we look at the Central University Admissions are one thing, and the universities will look at some parts. But we have a joint collective assessment of your documents that you submit. So, for example, if you apply for a master's program, we will be assessing your general entry requirements and also your English level. And then the universities will assess the specific entry requirements and also do the merit rating for the programs. So we have a little different roles in terms of what we do, but we collaborate in this. And for bachelor's applicants, we will have a little bit more what we do at university admissions. Then we will also look at specific entry requirements and merit rating. So it's a little bit different depending on if you're applying to a bachelor's program or master's program, what the universities do and what we do at the Central University Admissions.
For master's programs, it's often at the university. That's where they want to look at CVs and letters of intent and previous papers that maybe you've written that they've asked for. It's at that level that they start to look a little bit more closely at applicants to find out who were the best for the programs.
And it's very difficult to answer how they evaluate different applications, because all the universities are individual agencies that would assess differently. So for some universities, it's important with the GPA. For some universities, they don't even look at the GPA. They just look at other things. So it's very, we can't really answer like this is how the universities in Sweden do or assess.
That's for masters.
For masters, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool, thanks. That's a good explanation. So after the students then have applied, and let's say they applied before the application deadline and send in all their supporting documents, what's going to happen until they receive their admission results? And when do they receive those?
Yeah.
Ida's going to be very busy.
I'm going to be very busy. My colleagues and I are going to be very busy. We're already very busy. I should say, like, if you submit your documents today, it's not sure that you'll get a response from us regarding anything missing before the deadline. So I'll say this now, because right now we have, I don't know, it's thousands, I don't know, maybe 5,000 applicants with like active applicants that pay their fee or submit documents that we are currently assessing. So we have a lot to do already. But we will receive more and more documents the closer we get to deadline. We are aware of that. So through February and March, we will assess all the documents as well, along with the universities as well, that will also assess the documents. And during this time, we can still send you messages regarding what's missing if any documentation is not okay. But know then that since we send this message after 1st of February, it's not that you get extra time, so you can just submit your documents and we will look at that. All the documents that I submitted after 1st of February, we will only start assess after the admission results are released in April. So I think for masters, it's 7th of April, and for bachelors, it's 13th of April. So during that time, I know it seems like a long time, but for us, it's not. So we're going to be assessing all the documents.
What you can do is make sure that you keep an eye on your email. If we have sent you any messages about anything, you'll get an email about going into your account and checking to see if there's anything that you need to do or anything that's missing. But this is why it's so important to try to get everything in today, if you can, as soon as possible, because as Ida said, it takes a while for us to contact students and let them know that there may be something missing, and make sure that you send in everything. And the best way to know that you've done what you need to do is to go into university admissions, and even more boring than Ida says that she is to go in and read the stuff that we've written on university admissions. Actually, the stuff that I've written on university admissions, but a big tip is to sit and read it. I know people don't like to read websites anymore, but we have some fantastic information about how to apply. And we also have specific pages for each country. So if you have your studies from a certain country, like I have my studies from the US, I would go into the United States page if I was applying to masters, and I would look and find out exactly what it is that I need to do. For example, if you're from the US, you have to have your documents sent directly from your university or from your high school, which isn't the case for most countries. There's 5 or 6 maybe that need to do that. But go into your country page and check and find out exactly what it is that you need to do. And I promise if you follow the instructions there and how you're supposed to submit your documents, you're going to be all set. Most people, it's really impossible to mess up your actual application, but where people make mistakes is where they start to send in their documents and they don't pay attention to things like you need to scan in your original documents. And so they scan a copy and we can't accept them. Scan in your documents in color and they don't do that and then we can't accept them. Just make sure you actually do it right from the beginning and don't think, well, it says that for English I need these things, but it probably would be okay if I did this instead. We say that's a no-no. Make sure you read the instructions and you should be just fine. It's not really as complicated, I think, as people think. I think what winds up being complicated is that different countries have different ways people are supposed to apply for admissions to universities. So it's just to make sure that you do the right thing to apply in Sweden.
Can you, because you've mentioned this to me before, Marleen, about the country-specific information. Can one of you maybe just speak a little bit more about, I guess, like what students should be aware of when it comes to that country-specific information, and what kind of, I guess, the like common mistakes are for that? So that
and Ida is actually one of the people responsible for what actual information is on those pages. I'm just the one that's writing it there. So Ida, you're perfect for
Oh,
this.
yeah. No, that's like Marleen said, it's so important to read them. I think it's very easy to find them now on new websites. Just go look where your country of study, not where you're from. It's obviously the country of study that is interesting. And from at those country-specific information you can find if you have to send your transcripts directly, as Marleen mentioned, but also like translation requirements, which are different depending on country. A lot of good information is there.
I actually I don't know if you guys can post this, but I put a link to the country information pages for
Oh,
masters and bachelors. I'm not sure if that's something you can pop up
I
there.
think my colleagues can definitely get that on the screen there.
That's perfect.
Absolutely. Let's see. So we're going to shift gears a little bit here. We got a question from the audience. We'll add that link just in a little bit here. But right now, we have a question here from the audience. Someone who's applying for the second time through Universityadmissions.se. And he sent his transcripts already last period. Does he need to submit those documents again?
No.
Good question.
It's the beauty of the whole thing. No, we keep the documents. Is it 10 years, I think, isn't what the requirement is in Sweden to keep documents. But if you have anything new that you've done since then, any new studies, those we'd like to see. So make sure you send anything new that's happened since then.
Yeah, and make sure that you didn't get like a message last time regarding something not being complete, so you don't miss out on that. You can also contact us and ask if we've registered your studies, if everything's clear, in case you're worried.
That was very, very clear, and it's nice they don't have to do it again.
I can also say when you go on the documents page, when you log into University Admissions, you go to your profile and you go to the documents page, you can see there's information about what documents you've uploaded. There's a list of the names of the files, which you should still have on your computer. So you can see which ones you've sent in. I know I sent in documents quite a long time ago, and I did them I'm from the US, so they sent them themselves. There's also a date on when documents have arrived by regular mail. So you can see if there's a date there. But if you go in and you're not really exactly sure what you have and haven't sent in, just like Ida said, contact us at University Admissions, and we'll be able to check it and let you know if there's anything that you still need to get into us.
Brilliant, thanks. Excellent. So we're getting a number of questions here about English language tests and kind of how to show those things. So one of the questions here for the TOEFL, is it okay to upload the PDF sent with the results? You gave a thumbs up.
Yes.
I think that's encouraging.
That sounds like the good thing to do. Upload the PDF and we will verify the results. So as long as we have the information we need, your results and a certain number, we will verify it and register the English level from that.
English tests have become a lot easier for you guys, right? Because you can verify everything online now. I know before people used to have to contact different agencies and have results sent directly to University Admissions. But now the process for, I think, all of our English tests now are that we can verify them online, or the most common ones, I should say, that we've listed on University Admissions.
Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. Thanks. Is there anything else you want to mention? Like any advice, I guess, you have regarding English language? Certificates or
I can talk about English for the rest of the time if you want. English is probably like most of the questions we get are regarding English level, and I'd say like the general rule is to do a test for us to register your level of English, but we have a bunch of exemptions from that rule. And it can be quite hard to navigate among the exemptions. What I can say, and which is quite a common mistake, is that you think it's enough to submit just a certificate issued by the university that says English has been language of instruction. That usually is not enough. The only countries we accept that are from the EU countries and EEA and Switzerland. So if you have studies from outside EU, I would recommend a test. We do have other options. For example, if you have like your bachelor in English language, for example, obviously you will meet the English requirements. Some universities only has English as language of instruction, and we have a website where we can check this, and if we can see and get information that English has been the only language of instruction at this university, for example, American University in Cairo, for example, we can find that it only has English as the language of instruction. So then you'll meet the requirement. And there are certain countries, certain African countries, for example, that will, as long as you have a degree from that country that meets the requirement, you will also get the English level. So there's a bunch of exemptions. And also here, maybe we could pop in that link too, to thoroughly read the information about the English language requirements, because it can be a little bit difficult to navigate, but make sure to read it through.
One of the things I can say is those country pages again, because we've put specific information on the country pages. If you're exempt from taking the English test, it will tell you how else you can meet the English, which is fantastic. So just go into the country page and you can find out there. I think, I use myself an example, and then I use Swedes as an example as well. It would kind of be like me saying, well, I'm from the US, so I must meet the English. And I don't necessarily. It depends on what I've studied in the past. If I don't have a completed upper secondary education, for example, I can't just say that I meet the English because I have to have completed English in school. It's the same thing for Swedes who apply for education in Sweden. They can't just say, well, I meet the Swedish because I'm Swedish. It doesn't work that way. So you have to make sure that you can prove, and it's good for you. That's the thing as well. It's so important to understand that your English needs to be good enough that you can study at university. I know Doug has I can give away this a little bit, but Doug, you studied in Sweden, a master's program, but you've studied with Swedish around you, and it's difficult to do studies in a language that isn't your first language. So, but you can, if you're good at the language and you studied it, then you should be just fine.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All right. So we have another question here from the audience, and this is from someone who is going to be defending their bachelor's thesis on the 2nd of February, and they're wondering if they can still apply and submit documents later if they're applying to a master's program. Do they have to have finished everything regarding the bachelor's before?
Nope.
No. So if you're in your last year of studies, you can submit the documents you've received up until now. So your transcripts up until now, and along with a letter or a certificate issued by the university that you are currently studying, and you will receive your degree soon.
You can do that for masters because your GPA often isn't the most important thing that people look at. You don't have to have your final school grade. So just as long as the university sees that you're almost finished with your bachelor's, and the university says, well, they're on track to finish their bachelor's, you just submit whatever you have up until then and we can look at it. If you're applying to bachelor's studies and you haven't finished your upper secondary studies, there's a different story, because there you compete for places based on your grade point average, and your grade point average is based on your final school grades, and you haven't finished your upper secondary studies yet. So we don't recommend that you apply for bachelor studies if you haven't completed your upper secondary studies. In that case, you can wait until the next semester to apply. You can wait a year to apply, but it would just be a shame to pay the application fee and hope that everything was going to work out, and you won't have enough time to get everything that you need in order to be able to compete for places. So don't do that. But masters should be just fine. We have actually on University Admissions, there's a template that you can print out that if your university would like, they can fill out that instead of something they may already have themselves. So.
Oh, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks. So just a shout out, if you're joining this live stream recently, we are taking questions from the audience here. Go ahead and write your question in the chat if you'd like. We're not going to get around to answering everyone's questions, but we're doing our best here. And there's also a colleague from University Admissions who is active in the chat answering questions as well.
I see something really quickly based on the one we just said. Someone named Okka has written, as a student in the last year of bachelor's, are my chances to get accepted lower? No.
Okay.
There's no difference if you're in your last year or if you've completed your studies.
Okay, perfect. And a follow-up as well, because the previous question we had on there was asking about scholarships. Can you also apply for a scholarship? And yes, you can apply for a scholarship as well, even if you haven't finished your your bachelor. There's no downside for that either. Though the scholarships the Swedish Institute offers, we do require some work experience for those, but let's not get into those details right now. I'm sure most of you guys know about that. We have a long follow-up question here. So Marleen, about what you said earlier about submitting a letter of intent, how does someone make sure that the correct university or program receives it? This person uploaded it to other documents with the application number and the document name. Is that enough? And amazing Swedish as well.
Tack så mycket.
Tack så mycket.
I think that should be just fine, don't you as well, Ida? You look in the admission system. That should be fine.
I think a lot of people also ask me and worry about, like, what should I name the documents? Do I put it in the right category? That's mostly for you guys. When you categorize, it's good for you to know, like, okay, what did I submit under English and what did I submit under upper secondary? Because in the end, we will receive everything in the admission system and take a look at everything. And the universities will look at what has been, like, directed to them. So that sounds like a very good idea that this person has made. So it's don't worry about that, like, the right university will not receive what you've submitted, because they have access to everything that you've submitted.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, that's perfect. All right, another question here from the audience. Thanks everyone for sending in so many questions here.
I can see them flying by on the right, and I'm just so tempted. Just
so someone here is they submit other documents first and then modify them with the English proficiency test after the 17th of January. Is that okay?
Just as long as it's in by the 1st of February, right, Ida? Yeah.
Yeah,
you can submit. 1st of February.
Yeah, you can submit like parts of your documents in October and the rest of your documents in January. What might happen, like, if you submit it now and you don't have the English level, you might receive a message from us saying, like, hey, you don't meet the English level. But as long as you are safe with, I'm going to submit my tests before 1st of February. So then we will have a look at all the documents that are received by 1st of February. So go ahead.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks.
Can I attack a question that just flew by here that I saw in the corner of my eye? It's about application fees, which we have not talked about.
I was trying to grab that one.
Yeah, they're like,
it flew by too quickly.
If they're going so quickly, I can't even tell you. But
we'll get it back up on the screen. Yeah, that's fine.
Application fees. You can pay. The easiest way to pay the application fee is with a credit card online, right on Universityadmissions.se. But we are very aware that not everybody has a credit card to use. A suggestion that I can make is, if you know someone that you trust each other, you have a good relationship, and they have a credit card, I would suggest that you use their card and you pay them back. It sounds silly to say that, but a card is just so much easier. But if you don't have a card, it's also okay. We have instructions online for how you can do something called a bank transfer. It's a little bit difficult to get to the instructions on how to do a bank transfer. You have to go to the application fee page, and everyone has to read the terms and conditions first. So you have to read the terms and conditions, check that you've read them, and you'll get a whole thing of instructions on how to do what's called a bank transfer. Obviously, it's called a bank transfer. I don't know what else it'd be called. We officially call it a bank transfer. Duh. But anyway, and what you basically need to do is go to your bank and tell them that you need to transfer. I'm dying because I'm so ridiculous sometimes. 900 Swedish kronor, the equivalent of 900 Swedish kronor to University Admissions. I think the important things to think about when you do this are that you have to have I think there's an application fee number or an application number. Pamela, who's sitting there, knows for sure, but I think Ida knows as well. Yeah. But you need to have this number so that you can connect your application to the money that you're submitting via the bank. It wouldn't be so fun if you sent 900 kronor and nobody knew who the money was supposed to be for. No. One thing to think about when you do this, and this is unfortunate with banks, is that they often charge fees. And it's possible that they're going to charge a fee at your bank, and it's possible they're going to charge a fee at the bank when it gets to Sweden. But I don't think it's a super mega amount of money. But just as long as you go to your bank and you explain to them what it is that you want to do, it has to be the equivalent of 900 Swedish kronor. They can transfer dollars, they can transfer euro, just as long as when it comes into the bank here in Sweden, when you transfer the money into kroner, that it's 900 plus that you pay the fees.
That's.
I feel weird answering
That makes
that
sense.
when Pamela, our fees expert, is sitting answering questions behind the scenes. But I'm pretty sure I answered that
you are.
correctly.
Yeah, that's correctly. I can guarantee.
It's called a bank transfer. Oh boy. Yep.
Everybody learned a new thing today. It's called a bank transfer.
I crack myself up sometimes.
We have a question here from an applicant who was, in a very timely fashion, uploaded or submitted all documents on the 19th of October. Amazing job, by the way. And they're still yet to receive their merit rating. Is there something they need to do?
I assume this person also paid the application fee, because we won't look at any documents until the application fee is paid.
Okay.
But if I assume
you document that you don't need to pay the application fee.
Yes, so I assume that also is paid for. And so then we have probably at least done our assessment at the Central University Admissions. However, how the universities work and in what time they will do the merit rating, I can't answer, unfortunately. So perhaps contact the university that you've applied to and ask regarding the merit rating if they have any, I don't know, answer they can give you.
But paying the application fee is important because they're not going to look at it until then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't see it as an active application until application fee is paid.
Yeah, great. All right, cool. So another question here from the audience. So some universities request to the applicants to submit a course syllabus along with learning outcomes to prove entry requirements. This might be a too difficult question to answer, I guess, but what if a university doesn't have those documents available for the applicant?
Tricky. Very tricky question. I would just recommend to do whatever you can to get those kind of documents from the university and submit whatever you can submit, and perhaps also explain to the university that you've applied to that this is all you can get and there's nothing more that you've tried, like show that you've actually been in contact with the university and that you've tried to receive the documents that they've asked for, but you haven't been successful in receiving more than you can submit.
Is it possible that they could look online to see if they can find the syllabus someplace on the university's website? It may be that you can't get an official document in your hand, but maybe the university has published the learning out or the syllabus or learning outcomes someplace on the website is something to consider. I would go maybe to the registrar's office or go to the someplace and just say, I really need this information. Is it officially, does the university have it anywhere? As a student, I would think you'd have to have access to a syllabus to know what it is that you're studying with your course, but that's about all I can think of.
Yep.
I've seen a question flash by about 15 times here. There's I don't know who it is. It rolls by, but it's a good question. And I just pulled up this on University Admissions, and Ida and I have actually worked on the information for this question because one of the things that we have on the English requirements page is the question, can I just send in a certificate or letter from my school or university? And we have said that in most cases that cannot be accepted, meaning that in general, you cannot just have your university say, hey, this person is good at English, no problem. But there is one exception. And it says a certificate letter is acceptable if you have the equivalent of 60 European credits with English as a language of instruction from, and this is what Ida was saying earlier, if you studied in an EU, EEA country, Switzerland, the US, English-speaking parts of Canada, Jamaica, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. If you've studied and received your degree in one of these countries, you have at least 60 university credits, then you can send in a letter from them. But if you've gotten your degree from any other country, the answer is no. That's why the list is there.
And 60 ECTS is equivalent to a year of study, you can say.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Thanks. It's easy for us to take things like that for granted, but okay, great. Thanks, Marleen.
I just saw it fly by so many times. Someone was very diligent in making sure they kept publishing it there, so I thought I better get to this one.
Feel free to continue to grab those good questions that come in here.
That's great.
So we have another question here. Is it okay to upload documents in several batches to not do everything at once?
It's funny because we have a limit for how much you can upload during a 24-hour period, and we thought that no one would ever do it, and then somebody did it, and they did it exactly the last day you could submit your documents, so they couldn't submit everything by the deadline.
No.
We were like,
well, that's good to know.
So yeah, and I think it's a lot, isn't it? Like 100 megabytes or something. If you go to the document page where you upload your documents, there's very specific information about what your maximum is per day, how much you can upload, but you can of course upload them in several batches. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. What you've written there, exactly. Diplomas, transcripts today, passport tomorrow. That's fine.
Perfect.
Just as long as before or by the 1st of
February.
February.
Yeah.
Okay, great. One of the questions you guys have mentioned before is the importance of submitting officially issued documents or official issued documents.
I just wrote something about that today because Ida wrote to me.
Oh, okay.
Didn't I? I did, for real.
Please share your advice or input to the audience for that one.
Well, we had information under masters and we actually added information to bachelors, but officially issued documents means that it's most often the registrar's office at the university where you studied, or it must be I know for me, it was the guidance office that issued my upper secondary documents, but they have to be officially issued. If you have a copy from somewhere else, or sometimes people write down themselves what they had and they send that in. I don't know if you probably have examples, Ida, of things that are not accepted, that are not considered official.
Yeah, so don't log into your student portal and just print your results from there, or make a print screen of your results from the websites. Just you need to have the official documents that you submit that have been issued by your university. It could be, it usually means that it's stamped or signed by the university registrar or equivalents. So it can look differently in different countries. So it's difficult to give like a very clear answer, but I think you as listener know what's official in your country of study.
That it comes from the right instance or the right people at your university or upper secondary school. And exactly as you say, most likely that someone has stamped it or signed it so that there's an official name on it, so people know this is an official document. I think that we have that information mostly because it's tempting to go in and find your information online and say, well, if you want to know what my grades were, I'm just going to print this out and send it in to you. But it's a little bit easier maybe to cheat a little bit on things like that. They're not official, so we don't actually know that that's your official transcript if we receive it that way.
That makes sense. And good for the listeners to know about that as well. We have a question here about file formats when they submit these documents and what formats the documents should be uploaded in. Does everything have to be PDFs?
Yeah, I think PDF is the only
PDF. There is one strange thing. I've actually logged in as myself here. What I'm doing is I went into University Admissions and I logged in and I went to my pages and I went to the section that's called documents. And if you click on upload documents, there's instructions for uploading documents. And it is the longest thing ever. I apologize for that. We really are planning on in the future of having our support information in more step-by-step form. It's the way that it is right now. We don't love it, but it's all there. And once again, force you all to read. Do not use PDF portfolio format because we can't read that type of format. I don't even know what PDF portfolio is, but don't use it. Only scans of original documents will be accepted. Scanning color, black and white scans will not be accepted. Scan every page, no matter what. Document size we have here in uploads per day. You can upload a maximum of 30 files per 24 hours. You can upload a maximum of 15 files per session. You can upload a maximum of 20 megabytes per session, and each file cannot be larger than 10 megabytes. And we have some special instructions for Apple users if you're on a Mac or an iPhone or an iPad, because we've noticed that there can be some problems with that. Don't use the embedded PDF viewer in Safari or Mac operating system. Create the document directly in Adobe Acrobat or an equivalent PDF program. Save it as a PDF X file so that the fields can't be edited. And when creating, choose print instead of save as. But go in there and take a look. Those are the few exceptions, but generally PDF.
And can I also say, you said that on the list, it says to submit the original documents. In some countries, it might feel like it's more official to like have a notary public, someone stamp the documents and then you submit it, but make sure to submit the original documents that you have received from your university. If you, for some reason, feel unsure what's the right document, you may submit both the original one and the notary public stamped one. Like, we're not gonna whip anyone for that, but like, just make sure that you submit the original one. That's the most important one.
Okay.
We may call you up and yell at you. No, I'm just kidding. Can you imagine how terrible that would be if we had a whole
Hey, this is Marleen from University Admissions.
You didn't read that page that I wrote, and now I'm here to tell you. No, that would be awful. We would never do that.
I mean, I think you've covered all the bases in the description of, I guess, like how many files to upload and whatnot. So there's kind of a follow-up question there about an official document or transcript, and it says it's valid without a stamp or signature, and then there's a link for verification. Is that something that'd be accepted?
Yes, it will. We know that we are nowadays receiving more and more digitally issued transcripts. So we are aware of that, and we are trying to solve that as good as we can. If the transcript says exactly that it's valid without a stamp and signature, and even better, if there's a link for verification, it's definitely going to be accepted. If we can verify it to be okay, of course.
Okay, great. That's good to know. And it's nice to you mentioned, I mean, I don't know if we want to encourage that, but if they all have questions about like which version to upload, they can always kind of play it safe and upload multiples as well.
I'm thinking of Pamela sitting here with all these questions flying by. I can say that some of the questions that I see here that you have are very valid questions, and they're sort of more directly about your own application. When we're done here, do not hesitate to contact us at University Admissions and ask the question. If we don't get to your question today, definitely, if you're worried, you can send an email, probably is the fastest way to get an answer. You can, or chat. You can even chat with us, and you can also call. Calling is a little bit difficult sometimes for international people, but I'm seeing things here that we can answer pretty quickly, but it's going to be tough to do it today.
How quickly do you generally get around to answer, like replying? What's the
it's usually we can answer within a few days. Okay. Right now, this is the most hectic month of the year. So I'm not going to guarantee anything here. I know right now we're answering questions that were received on the 5th of January, for example. So after the holidays, and we're also approaching deadline, we know a lot of people want to make sure everything's okay. And I would recommend to not email questions like, would this be okay? Or should I do that? Like, submit your documents. That's like the first thing you do. Submit your documents. If you've received a message from us that you don't understand, or if you think we've made a mistake in how we've assessed your documents, please let us know. But don't ask questions about documents that we can't see because you haven't submitted them. Submit your documents first, then ask your questions afterwards. So that will be helpful for us to be able to give you like a proper answer.
It's good, like realistic advice for them to know as well. You have a high workload now. Marleen, yeah.
I saw a little follow-up here too. Someone just said, okay, they have a Mac and they didn't upload it with whatever it was that I just read out loud right now and are unsure. I would normally say if we haven't contacted you, then it's probably okay. But as Ida said, we haven't really been able to get to. If I were you, if you've already uploaded your documents using a Mac and you didn't follow the instructions that I just said, do it again following the instructions that I just said. That way you'll know for sure that it's going to be okay. Because it's possible that I think the person said they sent it in 3 weeks ago. It's possible that it isn't, but we may not have gotten to you yet to let you know. And it would be terrible if we finally got to your application the 10th of February and guess what? We can't read your transcripts. So go into where I just said, into documents, and follow the instructions if you have a Mac or you're using iOS, and do it again. No problem.
And we have had holidays now in Sweden for almost 3 weeks, more or less. So we've had less people that have been able to answer your questions. So we are a bit back with answering. So we'll try our best to answer all your questions, but no guarantee that we can give answers before the deadline.
Yeah.
Application fees are a little bit different because if you've paid the application fee online, or if you've paid the application fee through a bank, the application fee page will be updated when we've received your payment. So that is one of those things where you have to wonder. I wonder if, and if we know that we got your payment back on a certain date, it will be that date that will be the correct date. So don't worry about that. If you've sent your application fee in before the deadline, no problem. With a bank, because it can take a little bit of time, I would suggest not waiting too long if you're going to transfer your funds, because banks can take, you know how banks are when they transfer funds, they can take a lot of time. So I don't know exactly how much time is 10 days, maybe. I would try to get on that as soon as possible.
As soon as possible, yes, for sure.
Okay. Great, thanks. We've had a few questions about people who have changed their names due to marriage, maybe, or for example, here, where the name is not the same on all the documents. What is your advice on that? Is that too specialized a question?
No, I could try and answer. It's not always accepted with an affidavit. So I would suggest to at least try. And well, it depends on what you've done to change your name. Sometimes it's just the name has not been really changed, but it's just like not correct on the transcripts or university documents. Then you need to try and contact your university and see if they can change your name to the exact one that you have in your ID. And sometimes, depending on like if you've gotten married, then we would love to see the marriage certificates for that, to see the name change. So a court affidavit is a bit risky, I would say. It's not always that we are able to accept that. So try, if the case is that the university doesn't really have the correct information on your documents, try and contact the university firsthand and see if they can change it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ida.
And I see a big no-no here in the list. Are you able to send in 2 applications with 2 different emails? No, don't do that. Because
what happens?
You're going to send in exactly the same supporting documents for both of them, and eventually we're going to see that it's the same person who has both of those email accounts, and you're not allowed to have more than 1 email account. So strongly suggest that you do not do that.
And we will merge those 2 accounts into 1 account, and then we will decide which application is valid. No, we have a system for that, but don't risk it.
Okay.
And there's also something about GMATs and GREs. The GRE is a US test. I don't think that any universities require a GRE or a GMAT. Those are very United States-centered tests. That I'm not actually sure.
Yeah, I think it might be if like Stockholm School of Economics might have something like that. But
if it is, it isn't many.
No.
And I would say just we don't really, what we work with, we don't work with those tests at all. That's where it's also important. And here's another little Marleen tip of the day, besides that it's called a bank transfer, is that what you really want to do besides looking at the country information page is also make sure you look at the program page or the course page at the university's website. On University Admissions, we've talked very generally about what you need to submit and general information for everyone who applies. But the universities can decide that there are other things that they would like to have for certain programs if you apply to them. And that's why you have to go to the universities. We have a link to it. If you go into the search results, or even if you go into your application page, there's a link. If you open up the information, there's a link to the university's website. And they have a ton of information about what you need to be able to get into the course. That course syllabus we talked about earlier will appear there, but they have information about, okay, we as a university, Stockholm University as an example, for this program, we also want you to submit a letter of intent. We want you to submit your CV, and we'd like to see your GRE scores. I don't think that Stockholm University does that, but just as an example, University Admissions is not going to have that information. So you really have to make sure you check with the university to find out what it is that they want to have you they want to look at. And just as Ida was saying in the beginning, after University Admissions, our work is done with looking at all of the general stuff that we have on University Admissions that we check. The university is going to take over, and they're going to look at all of those extra documents that they've asked for. But I will also say, if they haven't asked for them, don't submit them, because no one is going to be interested, but they're going to have to go through them anyway, because we have to look at, of course, every document that comes in. I always tell this story that there was someone several years ago who submitted, I think it was like 100-page document with just pictures of him doing some work stuff, and hanging out and all this, and it was lovely and charming. But it was no one I think what asked for those pictures. It was adorable, but it's not necessary. And the problem is, I can sit and think that it was, it was nice of him to do that. But an admissions counselor who doesn't have a lot of time has to go and read every page of that 100-page document because we look at everything. We have to. That's why we ask you to try not to send in multiple copies of documents and not to try to get it right in the first place. Because if you send in 4 copies of exactly the same documents, Ida is going to have to look at all 4 of them to make sure that they're not different in some way. So that's what that's all about. That helps explain why.
That's good advice. Thanks. Man, the time is flying by, I have to say. We have like 7 minutes more. I wish we could get to do
And
it
the questions
longer.
keep.
And the
And I
questions
think
keep coming in,
Pamela's all.
Yes, thank you. Amazing job, Pamela. Because the questions do fly by quickly. But one quick question here. So when someone is submitting documents, do they need to make one giant PDF with all of them, or can they upload them separately in different files?
I think that's what I was talking about before. Like, you don't have to worry about how you categorize your documents and how you use that. This is the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter if you put them in one file or if you put them in 2 files, as long as they're in the right megabytes or whatever it is. It's as long as it goes through, we're all happy. It doesn't matter how they are submitted.
Yeah,
I think that's also where this document thing comes in, that I hear a lot of times. It's really good if people can do one file and everything is in a certain order. But I think people are thinking that if their documents come in, we used to have to scan everything in ourselves. Now I think it's a different story, right, Ida? That it's not so strict now that everything should be in just one file. I don't know. That's
of course it's helpful if there are 4 years of study. It's not like 1, 3, 4, 2 that you have like the same 1, 2, 3, 4 years of studies in a row, but it doesn't matter. We're still going to look at the whole thing.
That's reassuring. Okay. So don't need to worry about messing up there. This is kind of related, but so regarding university documents, such as transcripts, do they need to submit an English translation and then also in the original language as well? And that, you already addressed the separate PDF aspect of that.
It's a good thing to, it could be the same, it could be separate, but it's good to also highlight that we both need your original documents and the English translation, because sometimes we only get the English translation and we fail to get the original documents in the original language, which we are always interested in seeing. So,
and we're going to send you back to the country page again, because your country page, your country of study page, will tell you exactly what your translation requirements are for your documents. Some countries, some languages are okay for certain documents and some for others. I don't even want to go into it right here because it's so complicated. It's a little bit complicated, but if you just read for just your country, you'll see exactly what you need to do.
So I've seen a lot of, thank you, that's really helpful. I've seen a lot of questions coming in throughout this about scholarships. And so just really briefly, you can apply for scholarships from universities you apply to, and those generally cover your tuition fee or part of your tuition fee. And you can also apply to for scholarships from the organization I work for, the Swedish Institute. We have Swedish Institute scholarships for global professionals. These are for master's studies. These scholarships cover your entire tuition fee and also your living expenses. There's various requirements for these, which you have to fulfill, like a work experience. I'm not going to get into all of those right now, just because what this live stream is focused on. But what is important for you guys to understand is that this scholarship application process is separate from, oh yes, your cat.
I'm sorry, but he was crying in the background. I think he had very important information for everybody, so I thought maybe you should all see him. He's very smart. He applies for admission every year, but he doesn't get in because he's not quite done with his previous studies.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry, Doug. Couldn't resist.
Very, very cute. But just to finish that about the scholarships for the Swedish Institute scholarships for global professionals, you have to apply for these scholarships separately. It's a separate application process from what Ida and Marleen are talking about when you apply for universities, and that is in early February. So you guys can read more about that on our website.
Everyone's excited. But another thing that we get a lot of questions about are the tuition fees, which is also something that we can't answer at the Center of University Admissions, because those are handled by the universities that you apply to. So if you have a question regarding the tuition fees, we direct you to every university in Sweden have their admission office, local admission office, that you can talk to about questions that are related to that.
And
Brilliant.
doctoral
Thanks.
studies, we can say quickly, I've seen some doctoral things fly by that.
Yep.
We are responsible for admission to bachelor's and master's programs, but not doctoral programs, not PhD programs. That's the individual universities. And some people have asked about scholarships for doctoral programs. And it's interesting with doctoral programs, they work a lot like, sorry, cat butt. they work they work a lot like jobs here in Sweden. So if you're going to start a doctoral program, you're going to wind up with a job, with a placement in that way. But we can't really answer any questions about PhDs because we don't work with them at all. So just thought I'd say that quickly.
Thank you, Marleen. And then just to kind of hop on that about tuition fees and whatnot, financial aid. If there's scholarships, question here, scholarships or financial aid for EU students to cover living costs for bachelor's level. There are no scholarships, at least in Sweden, from the universities or from the Swedish Institute for EU students to cover living costs. And there is, just to be clear, there's no application fee or no tuition fee if you have a EU or EEA passport, in case you are not already aware of that. But it's a nice surprise, I suppose, if you are finding this out now, a few days before the application deadline. We have to wrap up soon. So I want to ask both Marleen and Ida if you guys have anything that you really want to say, any super important advice to pass on to our listeners.
Wow.
Probably.
Now it all comes down to
Okay.
this one last sentence.
One thing each, I guess.
Sum it up.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Or anything we haven't covered yet that you think is important to cover.
I'm just going to say again, if you read the instructions on University Admissions, it's going to help you so much. A lot of the questions that I've seen, scroll by here. And I know I'm the kind of person who's a reader, but I'm also older than probably everyone that's here. And we used to have to read everything all the time. But definitely read the information. If it's unclear, contact us. We'll be glad to help you. And if you're unsure of something, contact us. We'll be glad to help you. I think that's the best advice I can give you. But probably at least 50% of the questions that have scrolled by, I know that the information is on University Admissions somewhere. But we're unsure sometimes. And I understand, we want to be sure. It's like someone who said, I just did this with my file and I think it's okay, but I'm not sure. Of course you're not sure. I mean, we're like that as human beings. So if you're not sure, give us a call or send us an email or chat with us. We'll be glad to help you.
And I saw the question that came up that, for Monday, for the 17th of January, the application needs to be complete. You can't change your application after the 17th of January. But also remember the 1st of February, deadline for submitting documents. So important. And make sure to submit all your documents and all the pages of your documents and submit them in a good scan so we can see what you've tried to submit.
And the specific time is midnight?
That's a question we get all the time, which blows my mind,
I always get so scared, like, which day? Or like, so
it's like,
just,
some people, when they hear 1st of February, they don't understand if we mean like the first minute of the 1st of February or the last minute of the 1st of February. We mean the last minute of the 1st of February. But I understand a bit that people ask. I get it. But it's the last minute of the 1st of February. And we've looked at it's the same thing with the application deadline too. We see that a lot of people come in the last minute when it's the big Swedish application round. In past years, a while ago, people actually could crashed the website a few times because so many people came in the end. Yeah. And a really fun fact is that when there was there's American Idol and Swedish Idol, that song program. Once we had the last date for applications on a Friday, and we saw that hardly any applications came in when they did the final of the song contest, because we figured everyone was on TV trying to figure out who won. It's hilarious. You can see people like pop up during commercial breaks and things. So we understand. But try to get stuff done as soon as possible.
Get it in now if you can. And I know we might have not answered all of your questions, but please send us an email if there's any question we haven't answered here. And best of luck to all of you guys.
Definitely.
Hope to see you in Sweden soon.
For all
and
of you.
I can actually end with something wonderful. Sweden is such a democratic country. A lot of people worry about, well, do we look at people from different countries differently? Is there an age limit? You know, am I going to be penalized because I did this or that? Everyone in Sweden who applies for admission is treated exactly the same. One of the reasons why we have all the rules and regulations we have is to make sure that we treat people the same, even though they have different grade systems from different countries, different syllabi, all of that. So one thing I can guarantee you is that your application will be treated just like everyone else's, and you have just as much of a chance as everybody else does. We don't do any penalties. And if you're lucky, maybe my cat will be the one who will review your application. We should get him a job. He looked like he knew what he was doing.
Ending on that note. Thanks, Marleen. But super good advice as well. And Ida and Marleen, thank you so much. We have to do this, and we will do this again. And thanks to all the listeners for joining today. All right, guys, have a great day.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
Hej då.